Smokey the Bear used to say only you can prevent forest fires. But you know, Xcel could help out more too, and they say they can, at a cost.
Is that $1.9 billion money you'll be asking to be paid by customers?
The three things I'm watching for in tonight's presidential debate. And yeah, one of them is fact-checking, because the truth matters. Last summer's mosquitoes and West Nile were brutal. We look ahead to this summer while catching up with a Coloradan still rehabbing from a case of the virus last year.
I had to relearn how to walk and talk and balance and hold a fork, knife, pencils, telephone.
And the respectful return of a World War II POW's remains, decades after he last left home. That's tonight on Next. Colorado's first human West Nile case is here early this year. Last year was the worst in decades for mosquitoes and the virus in our state. So our Evan Krugel starts us off tonight with what is essentially a summer mosquito forecast.
These mosquitoes like to take my blood in the morning.
Most people try to avoid mosquito bites.
These guys, they won't have it any other way.
But Bob Hancock welcomes the pain.
I can barely feel it.
Feeding his jungle mosquitoes at his MSU Denver lab.
I'm the only one that gets to feed them here. Unless, of course, it happens outside of my watch.
Bob is known as the Mosquito Man, and last year he was busy.
We measured the sheer numbers of mosquitoes with traps, and we had there are traps that are set weekly, and we had numbers of mosquitoes that had never been seen before.
That led to a historic year for West Nile virus, with Colorado leading the nation in deaths and nearly setting records for hospitalizations.
Okay, are you ready?
One of those patients was Doug Pfluger, who is still finding his balance on his daily walks with Trevor.
It's good to have something to hold on to.
Doug has MS, but never had major problems until last August.
I was fine one day working out in the garage or the backyard, and that night I was laying on the floor.
Doctors at UC Health diagnosed him with West Nile virus.
I was basically paralyzed. Couldn't move, fingers, toes, anything. And that was really dark. You can imagine laying in the hospital bed, staring out the window, Colfax, watching the cars go by and couldn't move.
After months of rehab, Doug has regained most of his mobility, but still gets tired quickly.
And I mean, my hands are still numb, my feet are numb. That's one of the lasting effects. I've got a headache that I've had since last September.
He says he's worried for others and wonders how last year's mosquito boom will impact this year.
I've heard that this year's going to be worse than last year. So, I wish everybody luck, and hopefully not too many people have to go through it like I did.
It's on our mind, and we're expecting more of the same.
Bob says it's still too early to know how the year will shake out, but says people should prepare for another year of unexpected bites.
Now, Bob says early season traps aren't showing huge numbers, but he says that could change. He believes that dry spring we had may have actually killed off some of those offspring from last year, but he says we really won't know how bad this West Nile season could be until much later this summer. Kyle.
Yeah, I'm curious if the early season numbers look good kind of on the whole, but we've got this one case out of Arapahoe County. When do you think we are going to know?
Yeah, he says it could really be 3-4 weeks from now, maybe all the way into August. These West Nile cases typically spike much later in the summer, so having one right now, he says, is certainly concerning. But he says what he's seeing in his traps isn't necessarily concerning on its face. So could be a few weeks, but certainly we'll find out at some point.
Good perspective. Evan, thank you. City of Denver is going to face another jury trial over the police response to social justice protests in 2020. This week, a federal judge allowed a lawsuit from protesters to move forward, said that the city's response to those claims has been callous. In the lawsuit, a group of 8 protesters and bystanders claimed they were all injured when police used so-called less lethal munitions on them in 2020. They've sued the city instead of the police department or the individual officers because they claim that Denver had a history of allowing police officers to violate people's rights. Denver asked the court to rule on the case without going to trial. City attorneys argued the protesters couldn't prove that the city's policies are what caused their injuries. Judge sent it to a jury trial anyway. said the jury could find that Denver had an informal custom of allowing officers to indiscriminately use force against protesters. Denver police have already lost a federal jury trial over their response to the 2020 protests. In that case, protesters were awarded $14 million in damages. With this week's primary elections, both parties are gearing up for Colorado's 8th congressional district to be the showdown here in November. It's the newest district in the state, just 2 years old. It's the North Metro suburbs up to Weld County. The National Republican Congressional Committee is reserving $2.3 million worth of advertising to target Democratic Congresswoman Yadira Caraveo. She will be facing Trump-endorsed Republican Gabe Evans come November. The district is one of 22 districts that the NRCC has labeled a battleground. Democrats already earmarked $1.5 million in ad time earlier this year to protect Caraveo and try to hold the seat. Caraveo is likely to point to her bipartisan voting record representing that narrowly divided district. Today, she and another freshman Democrat from Colorado, Brittany Pedersen, joined nearly all Republicans in the House in voting to ban the State Department from citing the Gaza Ministry of Health's death toll numbers in the Israel-Hamas war. Caraveo and Pedersen were among a minority of moderate pro-Israel Democrats who supported this bill. It's an amendment on an appropriations package. It's not guaranteed to pass the Senate. A current president and a former American president will debate for the first time in history tonight. 7 o'clock, we'll air that CNN debate on 9 News. We'll stream it on 9 News Plus. Here are 3 things that I'll be watching for. 1, cost of living is a key concern here in Colorado. Can President Joe Biden clearly lay out what his administration is doing about the cost of living inflation without blaming factors outside of his control? Because even if that might be accurate, it's not what people who are hurting financially want to hear from the president. 2, I'll be watching to see if former President Donald Trump can outline a mass deportation plan that feels fair and achievable, something that taps into the popular support that you see for some type of action on the immigration issue without Trump repeating some of his wilder suggestions like sending in the National Guard or the military into communities to round up more than 10 million people. And lastly, I'll be watching to see if the CNN moderators allow obvious lies to go unchecked on the debate stage, or if they'll do some kind of basic fact-checking in real time. It's not about inserting themselves into the debate. It's about making sure that viewers, voters, who do not live and breathe politics aren't somehow tricked into thinking that a big lie is reality because there's a journalist sitting there silently when they could quickly and politely remind everybody of the truth. CNN presidential debate airs at 7 o'clock tonight. 9 News, streaming on 9 News Plus. I'll be along with context and analysis on 9 News at 9 and 10. Xcel Energy has plans to prevent future wildfires sparked by its lines. Yes, this plan involves precautionary blackouts. Yes, the plan involves burying some power lines underground. And yes, it costs a lot of money. Our Marshall Zellinger looks at what kind of wildfire prevention you can get for nearly $2 billion of your money.
Xcel just filed its wildfire mitigation plan, consisting of hundreds of documents, like this map showing wildfire risk areas on a scale of yellow, low, to red, high, and this chart explaining how public safety power shutoffs would work in the future, highlighting more communication. And then there's this footnote that basically says if the power is shut off and a fire happens, the fire is not proof that a shutoff should have been implemented. And on the flip side, if a shutoff happens and there is no fire, there is no proof that it was really prevented.
I think the footnote that you just read is another way of saying you can't prove a negative.
Xcel Energy Colorado President Robert Kenney defended the price tag of public safety, which includes $200 million to put 50 miles of power lines underground over 3 years, and artificial intelligence cameras to detect wildfire smoke, a total wildfire mitigation plan of $1.9 billion over 3 years.
$9 a month, less than 30 cents a day.
And for that money, you'll get more maintenance, like poles being inspected and replaced, and weeds mowed. Isn't that something as an Xcel customer we're already giving Xcel money for?
This plan increases the size, the scope, and the scale of the work that we are doing. We inspect approximately 20,000 distribution poles a year with our overhead line inspections. Due to the fact of climate change and increased risk in the state of Colorado, We will be inspecting approximately 44,000 poles in year one of execution of the plan.
If Xcel does a public safety power shutoff, the power cannot be turned back on until Xcel visually inspects each line. Last month, PUC Commissioner Eric Blank asked if the company could speed up the process without having to look at each power line.
Whether that's a foot patrol or the use of a drone or a helicopter, we have to actually look at the equipment to be certain that equipment hasn't fallen to the ground, that you then re-energize and create the very risk that you were trying to mitigate.
Let's say you're interested in learning more about this wildfire mitigation plan yourself. You're in luck because there's a website that you're not going to be able to really follow it all. There were 106 documents filed today as part of the wildfire mitigation plan. It had included like that cover page of if they're going to do the public safety power shutoff, which includes this map of red, orange, and yellow, just indicating that you live in a dangerous area or not. And then this is how they're going to communicate with the public about shutting people's power off. 8 pages there. There's just hundreds of pages, Kyle, that I get mind-numbing about because, one, reading them all, but two, also making this accessible to people. Xcel says they're going to go have town halls to describe what's in here. But there's some stuff in here that we find that people don't always talk about when they're giving the bullet points. And I just wish this were an easier process. It's going to take 6 to 12 months where you're going to get hundreds and thousands of more pages of documents filed.
I don't know. It sounds like job security for you, Marshall. I mean, but for real though, I mean, I respect Xcel for going out and doing town halls, but at the end of the day, like they're out there pitching their side of the story on it. But it's also good to have journalists who are not just repeating Xcel talking points on television, but are actually digging into those hundreds of pages of documents and asking some questions before we get to that final number and those final impacts.
And I understand that people only probably care about what that final number is. How much is my bill going to go up? But what that won't tell you is how many times are they going to shut your power off? What's the criteria to shut your power off? What's the criteria to get it back on? How many hours do they have to get it back on? Like, that's what's in these documents that is not going to show up on your bill.
Yeah, I mean, we're truly talking about issues of life or death. It's important. So we're going to spend some time here talking about it. Marshall, thank you. Nurses rallied outside the VA hospital in Aurora today, trying to bring public attention to a staffing crisis that they say is putting their patients at risk. This rally comes just days after a federal investigation detailed how short staffing there forced the VA to put cardiac surgeries on pause for a year in Aurora. The nurses union claims nearly every unit of the Rocky Mountain Regional VA is understaffed and that nurses in critical care and mental health units are stretched too thin with too many patients. It's the latest in a string of protests at VA medical centers across the U.S. as the VA plans to cut thousands of frontline jobs. This week, federal investigators released the findings of their investigation into staff shortages and a so-called culture of fear in the VA medical system in Aurora. From 2022 to 2023, critical staffing shortages forced the hospital to stop its cardiac surgeries. The report says there's no proof that patients were harmed, but nurses said today that patients are getting lower quality of care. VA disputes the union's claim that there's an ongoing hiring freeze for nurses, and they pointed to the fact that there's been record hiring over the past few years. A vital connection between two parts of Colorado will soon be restored after months of repairs.
I hope that this story brings you some faith that your loved ones will return home.
A long-delayed return home for an American soldier who's held prisoner during World War II. CDOT says the opening of the busted bridge over Blue Mesa Reservoir is ahead of schedule. Well, one day ahead of schedule. Emergency vehicles and smaller cars can start crossing the US 50 bridge next Wednesday, July 3rd. The main bridge between Gunnison and Montrose closed in April after inspectors found cracks in the steel supports. That forced drivers to take a 6-hour detour or use a local access road only open for a brief time each day. Over the holiday weekend, one lane will be open over the bridge for 12 hours starting at 6:30 in the morning. And County Road 26 will stay open as a detour. Meteorologist Lauren Robinson's in now and starting to look a little gloomy in Denver, but you think the storm action tonight will be out east.
That's right. We could see a couple of thunder showers here and there across the Front Range, with the stronger stuff certainly across central and northern portions of the plains. Right now, a live look over downtown Denver, where you can see it's getting a bit gray out there. 91 right now at DIA with calm winds. But let's go ahead and turn our attention to our HD Doppler radar, where you can see we've had a lot of showers and storms across the western slope and into the high country today. This teal triangle here is where we have one severe thunderstorm watch. The other severe thunderstorm watch is across central and northern portions of the plains, where we're expecting the strongest storms across the eastern half of the state. These areas are looking for those storms to push in to later this evening, but you can see the Front Range mostly dry, just a scattered shower here and there. Now, along with these storms, we have several severe thunderstorm watches again off to the west, where we could see ping pong size hail, frequent lightning, and lots of winds there. Then we could see tornado possibilities as these storms move their way into the Nebraska Panhandle. For the rest of us not included in the strong storm areas, we're under a marginal risk for severe weather in Denver. That means we're likely just going to see some thunder showers and gusty winds if anything does pop up overhead. Warm weather sticks around for one more day. We cool down on Saturday, then we're back in the 90s through the rest of the 7-day forecast.
You know, it's a great honor to be able to participate in something like this to help bring an individual home.
Coloradans show up to pay their respects to a fallen soldier returning home decades after he left. Each day at DIA, there are countless happy reunions, and a few more somber ones too, for one reason or another. The reason for a family waiting there today was the homecoming for the remains of an American soldier held as a prisoner of war in World War II.
You know, it's a great honor to be able to participate in something like this to help bring an individual home.
We're here to help veterans, and the group I'm in, we ride motorcycles.
We're providing an escort for Tech 5 Clifford Strickland.
He was a prisoner of war in a prison camp in the Philippines during World War II and survived the Bataan Death March.
And then he subsequently died of disease and was buried there in a mass grave.
We're now bringing him home. He was recovered and identified last November timeframe, and the family was notified in December 2023 that he had been recovered and his remains identified.
When he was positively identified, as the family started to plan, I had the honor of being requested by my family, because I'm currently active in service, to escort my great uncle home. A lot of overwhelming emotions of joy and anticipation of finally bringing great Uncle Clifford home. When I was asked to do it, my first feeling was unworthy. For those other family members out there that are or have family members that are MIA in any services, I hope that this story brings you some faith that your loved ones will return home. And I hope that it brings you some sense of joy for your own grief in dealing with that situation.
Ah, what a thoughtful perspective. Strickland's remains are going to be interred at the Union Highlands Cemetery in Florence this weekend. All right, so you want to know how much I love a good real-time fact check? I even love it when you do it to me. The fact I got wrong, politely corrected by so many of you, and your feedback next. Feedback tonight from John, who writes, "Do you really think that I care what you'll be watching for in tonight's presidential debate? How arrogant." Well, John, it is a question that I've been asked by other people this week, so clearly there are some folks who are interested in my take on that, and clearly you, John, are interested in my take on some things, as you have been writing in with your negative feedback for years. Real-time fact checks. We love them, even when they're aimed at us. Thanks to Vicki and Matt and Howard and Susan, who all politely but firmly wrote in to correct me tonight. Susan writing, "His name is actually Smokey Bear, not Smokey the Bear, like you're not Kyle the Clark."